to reap the earth. There's nothing going on. There's no more praises being sung. That's why there's silence. If you want to know something about God, go outside at night on a clear night and look at the heavens. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork, says Psalm 19, verse 1. The heavens declare his righteousness, and all the people see his glory. This takes us back to Revelation chapter 8, verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Remember, the 7 is parenthetical, like I said. The trumpets have always been used in the Bible and in secular history to sound warnings, to call to war. They used bugles to the charge bugle, that sent the cavalry out doing what they were going to do. So what John sees here is 7 trumpets, but before he gets to the trumpets, he sees something else. The trumpets start, and then he sees something else. He sees another angel that came and stood at the altar of incense, having a golden censer, and there was given to him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which stood before the throne. John's attention is taken from the trumpets that start to the altar. And he sees there that there are a large number of prayers that are being sent up. And we know that it's a large number because there's much incense that's being given. There is much intercession taking place at this time. God is not willing that any should be lost. He's working with the world, even though this is right down to the end of time, just before his second coming. He has not given up. He knows that there are still people on earth that will respond. And he reaches out his hand so that everlasting gospel can work on their hearts. He wants the whole world to be saved, even though he knows that they will not be. So there's much intercession, hoping that people will respond to his much more abounding grace. After seeing a preview in chapter 7 of what will be the end of the great controversy, that's what John saw in chapter 7, was who will be able to stand, and then what is the reward and the final results of what's going to take place at the end of time. He sees Christ literally in heaven, standing before the altar of incense in not the most holy place, in the holy place. As we studied through Revelation, we saw first Christ walking among the candlesticks, right? Then we saw him as the Lamb slain, which showed us the brazen altar, which was in the outer courtyard. Remember, I said every aspect of Revelation has some aspect of the sanctuary system associated with it. This is an illustration of the sanctuary. In reality, the curtain would never have been opened, except as the priest just slipped through on the Day of Atonement. But this is an illustration that shows both apartments. You see on the lower bottom down here, the table of showbread with the 12 stacks of bread, the 7-lamped candlestand, the priest standing before the altar of incense with the smoke going up and over the curtain. Then inside the most holy place, you see the Ark of the Covenant with the angels, the Shekinah glory shining there in the middle, and then the cutaway allows you to see the 10 Commandments down in the lower portion. All aspects of the sanctuary service point to some work of Christ. Everything, every part of the sanctuary service as it was built in the wilderness. Every curtain, every piece of furniture, every offering, everything pointed to some aspect of Christ's work. Christ said, I am the living bread. It had a table of showbread in that holy place. Christ says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. Christ also said, I am the light of the world. He is the antitype of the type of that 7-branch candlestick that was in the holy place. He said, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figure of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Wherefore he is able to save them to the uttermost, that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth, to make intercession for them. Back to Revelation 8. And the smoke of the incense which came up with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. Now in that picture we saw how that smoke went up and over the curtain. These are the prayers praying for the final mercy before the Lord comes. We will be praying for the world as part of that 144,000. We will be praying not for deliverance of ourselves, but for the salvation of those that we have worked for. And our focus is not on self. Our focus is on God and on saving people that need Him. We don't give up and dwell on our puny little selves and say, well, I'm saved. I don't have to worry about anything else. We work for those that are around us to try to help them come to a knowledge of truth. So we see, by reading these first 4 verses, that this happens immediately before the second coming, because this all takes place before the 7th trumpet sounds. But it's immediately before the 2nd trumpet sounds. Because verse 5 says, and the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Now going back to our parallels, we see that these things parallel the 7 last plagues. Revelation 16:17 tells us, and the 7th angel poured out his vial, and there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were on the earth. That's going to be a pretty bad earthquake. We've seen the parallels here. That's what we studied here this morning. These parallels are repetition. Through repetition, we see an expansion and a better understanding of the prophecy. So the principle of repetition and expansion is verified by what we studied here this morning. John did not see a series of different events. He saw a series of visions of the same events told in different ways. The telling of it in different ways shows us that it is universal in application. John did not see, beginning in chapter 4, a series of events that are going to culminate chronologically one behind the other until they're completed altogether. This is the futurist view. When you open up the book and you begin to read chapter 4, then chapter 5, then chapter 6, then chapter 7. So they don't see the seals and the trumpets running chronologically. I mean, they do see them running chronologically. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. They don't see them running parallel. They must run parallel because of what we've seen here this morning. You run the parallels, you say, well, this happened here, this happened here. It's the same thing. The descriptive words are the same thing. The time frame must be the same thing. The 7 trumpets. We're not going to get into the 7 trumpets this lesson, but we just need to remember that the 7 trumpets cover the same time frame as the 7 churches and the 7 seals. But it comes at it telling us a little different perspective. It gives us a military or a political perspective of what's going on in the world because of the difference in what it's covering, yeah. But it doesn't necessarily start at the same time. The 7 churches and the 7 seals started at the same time. The 7 trumpets start later. When we get to the trumpets, I'm not going to disclose that now, but when we get to the trumpets, we'll find out why the trumpets don't start at the same time as the churches and the seals. There's a reason, and we'll find that out next time.